one foot in the wild here. So I was supposed to be going to a bike night tonight, but because of the bad weather it's been cancelled. So I couldn't contend with myself staying in, so getting out for just a cup of tea and just reading my book. So I'll bring you back when I find somewhere to set up. I'm going to try a new area if I can get to it, and just try and clear my head for the day and just keep being. Looking alright spot. I can throw my mind for a bit. So I like to use carabiners. So I've got this like carabiner string. It's got a knot on this side. Does the job. I always want to teach these guys how to camp. I introduced them to hammock camping. Outdoors. They're brilliant, honestly. They're doing my son. You know, just realised I forgot my pegs. Yeah, this is what happens when you're not thinking straight. So much rush. So, what do you do if you haven't got pegs? That's a good question for you guys. You can either wrap it around the tree, or you can get a stick, and you can make your own pegs. And I got it. But anyway, it's some form of shelter. Right. So, here's a good thing to learn. You've got a wax coat and it's waterproof on bottom. This is one of the reasons why I use waterproof. You can then turn it into a seat and then you can sit down and kind of chill out. So, I've got my trusty Red Camp wood burning stove. It's quite easy to use. So it just kind of pops out when it wants to. So that's the ash plate, and that's the actual floor plate. Folds open, and then there's a bottom bit which goes like that. Slide the ash plate inside of it, like so, and then this on top, and voila, you've got yourself a fire pit. Question I'm thinking to myself is, where am I going to put it? Just put it in front of me. Let's reposition the camera in a minute. So I wouldn't say that I'm like a super camper or anything like that. I wouldn't say I've got magical powers or all. I think it's just with me growing up. I was always out working in the woods. So I think it's just part of my own identity, part of who I am. It's just me. I have the greatest fire today, I'll tell you that. Here's a good old trick for you. When in doubt, bring your own wood from home. Couple of logs. Should be alright. Come on. Calm down. didn't have a chance to get it. I saw it there a couple of minutes ago. The rump out, yep. Right then, my little woodland enthusiasts. So, I tend to get these little Twizzlers, wood wool firelighter Twizzlers. Bang a couple of them in, and you often just get a fire going, no problem at all. I've also, because it's a wet day as well, I've decided that I was going to fetch all my own wood. Eggshell. So yeah, I fetched my own wood in, and I've got my book which I'm still reading, Finding Hildesay, so I'll probably bore you in a bit reading again. Let's just get on with that. Right. For now, I've got the fire all set up. Ready? And there you can see that. Just test these angles. Yep. Right, let's get it going. Okay. It was already clear that my good friend Jet had completely taken the bull by the horns on this adventure. She loved it, being completely free to run around and sniff out rabbits and deer tracks. I could see how much more content she was, but the thing that really struck me out the most was her complete devotion and loyalty to me. If I stopped, she stopped. If I sat down to take 5, she sat down next to me. We were starting to understand each other very well, and I would soon learn to read her inside out. For example, if Jet walked close behind my heels for any more than 20 minutes, it was her way of telling me that she wanted to stop for the day. Often eager to continue to press on, I wanted to show the same devotion and loyalty to Jet as she showed me, and would stop for the day any time she asked. I adored her spirit. Looks and thirst for the great outdoors, she literally had the perfect dog's life, with all of my attention. My routine each time we stopped would be firstly getting the tent up and unpacking all the gear we needed for the night. Then I'd immediately freed up and give water to Jet to get her rested up. I'd then scope out a good spot to collect driftwood or fallen wood from the trees for fire. The second I was out of Jet's sight, however, she would bolt from the tent to be next to me. I felt so bad for her, as I just wanted her to rest up. Her loyalty often didn't do her any favours on this front, so each night I'd pitch the tent facing in the direction of where I'd collect wood, so she could see me at all times. Only then would she be content to stay put and keep warm and rest. God, I love her. By the time I reached Dunoon, I'd received a few messages from other walkers warning me of the next lock I was about to tackle, Loch Striven. One guy told me he'd attempted it, got lost and sat helpless crying, completely disorientated and petrified of the position he had got himself into. Others simply cut the whole thing off. You can look at the maps all you like, but until you're there you have no idea just how dense, overgrown and rocky it is in places. All I could see was forestry on quite a sheer slope. If I'm honest, I was foaming at the mouth to get my teeth into it. This kind of challenge was why I was here in the first place. The day before I went for it, I was made aware of an accomplished walker who had attempted this loch some 7 years ago, having completed the Munros, a range of mountains over a certain height in the Highlands. She had fallen badly and broken her leg, smack bang in the middle of one side of the loch. She had then crawled into her sleeping bag to wait for help, but wasn't found until some 4 years later by the crew of a fish farming boat. It was an awful and tragic end for the poor lady, but I just kept telling myself I'm not her. The least I could do was give it a go. After camping up for the night, hidden away in the small dark block of the forest and the hills above Dunoon, I set off to do Loch Striven. As I approached, I gained some higher ground as a viewpoint, so I could clearly see both sides of the loch. There was no doubt how incredibly dense it was. I set off scrambling through the low branches of the pine trees, getting constant whips to the face, scratching and cutting me on any bare skin that I was showing. It was infuriating and bloody hurt, so I came up with a new plan. In my bag I had a length of rope that I would use for washing line, to dry my gear or anything else it would come in handy for. I kneeled down and tied the rope around my waist and attached it to my Bergen. Now heavier than ever due to the amount of dog food I had to carry for Jet, I got on all fours and started crawling my way through the dense forestry, dragging my Bergen behind me. Once in a while, I'd reach a small opening where I'd stand up, stretch off and take a breather. Jet, for the first time since having her, went in front of me, sniffing out barely visible deer tracks for us to forge a passage through. It was hard graft, but I was in my element. What would have taken me only an hour to walk along a road would take me 7 hours navigating only one side of the forbidding body of water. Eventually I reached the first end of the loch, ecstatic that I had made it through, and having had so much fun in the process. Still running on adrenaline, I decided to knock off as much of the other side as I could, giving me enough time to pitch the tent and cook before dark. Immediately back in the dense woodland, we made our way skirting rigidly to the coast, clambering rocks, making sure I could see the sea water at all times, so as not to get lost or disorientated. We even eventually stopped for the day in a spot called a Ruby Point, a small opening of grass opposite the side where I started. I was delighted with our progress, as that left us only another 2 miles till we'd come out the other side onto the dirt track that edged along the coast. I pitched up the tent, made a fire, and had a lovely relaxing evening under the stars at the bottom of a 1,634 foot peak. Jet and I woke at the crack of dawn, eventually making it out the other side. It took me 4 hours to do 2 miles as we joined the track. I spotted my first house with a couple outside chatting. When I approached, he asked, "Have you just walked around that lock?" "Yes, mate. It was amazing to walk," I replied. "You're only the third person I've ever known to complete it," he exclaimed. I laughed. "I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. We loved it." And with that, I walked off, actually rather exhausted, with still another 6 miles before I made it to Clanetarive, where I would catch the ferry to my next island, the Isle of Brute. Whenever you're handling a kettle, always make sure that you put gloves on. Always do the safe things. Here's a tip: instead of going for the handle, use a piece of wood. Put it through, lift it, and drop it. Where was I? Lock's driving had taught me a valuable lesson, not only about the walk, but about life in general. I can't tell you about how many people warned me of this place and told me not to do it. But I had realised by now that people can only advise you or tell you how difficult something is based on their own limits. Remember that. Or what they believe they are capable of. Just because they are scared or unwilling to at least try something doesn't mean you might not be able to do it. I would never again let anyone try or put me off something that I truly believed I could do. Ironically, this would be a walk in the park compared to what the next few years was going to bring. I'm not saying it was easy, but I knew I had so much more in the tank. It's all about mindset and the total belief in one's abilities. I'd been getting a lot of advice based on hearsay rather than personal experience, but deep down I knew that, as much as I appreciate the concern and care for my well-being, anyone who had not at least tried it was in no position to tell me not to. I sat that night around the fire thinking to myself that there are 2 types of people when it comes to pushing limits. People who need to be encouraged and told they can, and people who need to be told they can't. I'm definitely the latter, and if I'm honest, I always have been. Telling me that I can't do something makes me more determined to prove that I can, but only to myself. It added fuel to my fire and made me want it even more. Never let anything ever knock you down. Always do your best. Always try your best. You can do it. And if you're failing at something, it means that you're learning it. It means that you're learning. Change is never comfortable. Change is never easy. You just have to keep going. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there. You'll get there. Thank you for listening to my video. Try my best to go forward, do my own thing. I hope you all do the same as well.